My father betrayed me after 12 years in his company. He chose my two-year-old nephew as CEO. But when I started my own business and his clients followed me, his empire collapsed. Now he begs for my help, but it's too late. I'm 34 years old. I work in real estate, and it's been 3 years since I've spoken to my father. I guess I should start from the beginning because this story is long, complicated, and if I'm being honest, it still hurts a little when I tell it. I grew up in a working middle-class family. My father, Richard, owned a real estate company that he started practically from nothing when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I watched him build that business from scratch, working 7 days a week, coming home late to dinners, missing my baseball games, the typical father obsessed with work. My mother, Margaret, always justified it, saying he was doing it for us, that someday it would all be worth it. And I believed her. I really thought my father was building something for the family, for the future, for me. Since I was 16, I started working at the company during summers, doing whatever they needed, filing documents, answering phones, cleaning offices. My father always said things like, "Someday all this will be yours, son," or "You're going to be a great leader someday," and I took it seriously. I ended up studying business administration specifically because I wanted to be prepared to eventually take over the family business. I graduated at 22, and instead of looking for work elsewhere, I went straight to my father's company. I started from the bottom, literally, doing exactly the same work as any new employee, and my father was super strict with me, stricter than with anyone else, supposedly because he wanted me to earn everyone's respect. And I did. Honestly, I busted my ass for 12 full years. I learned every aspect of the business, from how to negotiate with clients to managing finances, relationships with suppliers, everything. I stayed late, worked weekends, sacrificed relationships, time with friends, basically my entire youth. I dedicated to that company. By the time I was 31, I was practically second, in command. My father trusted me to make important decisions. Employees respected me. Clients knew me by name. Honestly, I thought I was living the dream. Building my future. Securing my place in the family business. My wife Sarah always told me I worked too much, that my father was exploiting me, but I told her it was temporary, that when my father retired I was going to be the CEO, and all that effort would be worth it. She wasn't very convinced, but she supported me anyway because that's how she is, amazing and patient. The thing is, my older sister Jessica, who never worked a single day at the family company because she decided to be a teacher, had a son named Tyler. Tyler was a good kid, don't get me wrong, but he was the typical spoiled child who always got what he wanted. Jessica adored him in an almost obsessive way, constantly talked about how smart he was, how special, how destined for success. When Tyler turned 18 and entered college, Jessica started pressuring my father to give him a summer job at the company. My father agreed, and Tyler worked there during summers throughout college. But honestly, he didn't do much. He'd arrive late, leave early, spent more time on his phone than working. I didn't pay it much attention because it was only temporary. I thought that after graduating he'd find his own path somewhere else. Tyler graduated when he was 22, with a degree in marketing or something like that, nothing really related to real estate or business administration, and instead of looking for work elsewhere, Jessica convinced my father to give him a permanent position at the company. I was a bit annoyed, but I thought, well, he's family, and maybe with time he'll learn and be useful. What I didn't expect, what I never in a million years would have imagined, was what happened at my father's 60th birthday party. My father organized this big celebration at an elegant venue, invited all the family, key company employees, important clients. It was a big event. I was there with Sarah, having a good time, thinking it was just a normal celebration. But halfway through the night, my father asked for everyone's attention, took the microphone and started giving a speech. He talked about his life, about building the company, about family, and then he said something that made me feel like I'd been punched in the stomach. He said he had decided it was time to start thinking about his retirement, that he wanted to make sure the company was left in good hands, and that he had chosen his successor as CEO. I was standing there, waiting to hear my name, thinking that finally, after 12 years of hard work, my father was going to recognize everything I had done. But no. Instead, he announced that Tyler, my 22-year-old nephew, who had barely been working full-time at the company for a few months, was going to be the next CEO. The room went silent for a second, or at least that's how I remember it, and then everyone started applauding. I stood there like an idiot, trying to process what I had just heard. Sarah grabbed my hand and whispered, "Are you okay?" But honestly, I couldn't even speak. Jessica was crying with happiness, hugging Tyler. My mother was smiling and clapping, and my father was standing there proud as if he had just made the best decision of his life. I felt like the floor was moving under my feet, like literally felt like I was going to vomit or faint or something. After the announcement, everyone started congratulating Tyler, and I just couldn't be there. I told Sarah I needed fresh air and left the room. I stayed outside for like 20 minutes, trying to breathe, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. Eventually, my father came out looking for me. He found me in the parking lot and said, "Son, we need to talk." And I said, "Dad, what was that? 12 years working for you, and you didn't even consider me?" He started with excuses, saying that Tyler was young and had fresh ideas, that I would still have an important role in the company, that it wasn't personal. Not personal. I had dedicated 12 years of my life, sacrificed everything for that company, and he chose a 22-year-old kid who barely knew how the business worked. I asked him directly, "Is it because he's Jessica's son? Is it favoritism?" And my father got angry, told me I was being immature, that I should be happy for Tyler, that it was best for the company. We argued for like half an hour, both of us yelling, saying hurtful things. And at the end, my father told me that if I couldn't accept his decision, then maybe I wasn't as professional as he thought. That night, when I got home with Sarah, I didn't sleep at all. I stayed awake all night thinking about every extra hour I had worked, every sacrifice I had made, every time my father had told me he was proud of me. It was all a lie. Or at least that's how it felt. Sarah told me that maybe I should wait a bit before making drastic decisions, but I already knew what I had to do. The next day, I went to the office early, wrote my resignation on a simple sheet of paper, and left it on my father's desk. I didn't say anything dramatic, just wrote that after 12 years of service, I was resigning effective immediately, and thanked him for the opportunity. I collected my personal things from my office, which weren't many honestly, some photos, some papers, and I left. My father wasn't even at the office yet because it was early, so I didn't have to face him again, which was probably better. The first few months after resigning were weird. My father tried to call me several times, but I didn't answer. My mother also called, saying I was being dramatic, that I should come back and support Tyler in his new position. Jessica sent me a super passive-aggressive text message saying I was selfish for not celebrating Tyler's success. I basically cut contact with my entire family, which was painful because despite everything, they were still my family. Sarah was amazing during that time. She supported me completely, told me I had made the right decision, that I deserved something better. I started looking for work at other real estate companies, went to some interviews, but honestly, my heart wasn't in it. I was still angry, hurt, betrayed. Meanwhile, I started hearing rumors about how Tyler was doing at the company. And they weren't good rumors. Turns out Tyler, with all his supposed intelligence and fresh ideas, was making terrible decisions. One of the first things he did was fire 3 senior employees who had been at the company for years, because according to him, they were old and didn't understand modern marketing. These were guys who knew the business inside and out, who had relationships with important clients, and Tyler just fired them. Then he started spending company money on stupid things, like remodeling the offices to make them look more modern, hiring an expensive branding company to change the logo, organizing networking events that cost thousands of dollars but didn't generate any real business. Clients started complaining. Tyler didn't know how to handle professional relationships. He was arrogant, arrived late to meetings, made promises he couldn't keep. Some employees who still trusted me contacted me through private messages telling me what was happening, and honestly, it was like watching a car crash in slow motion. I knew the company was in trouble, but it wasn't my problem, or at least that's what I told myself. My father had made his choice. Now he'd have to live with the consequences. About 6 months after my resignation, things got really ugly. Tyler, in his infinite wisdom, decided the company needed to expand rapidly. Without consulting anyone, without doing any market research, he signed contracts to open 3 new offices in cities where we had no presence or knowledge of the local market. He invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in these offices, hired new employees, basically bet the company's future on this expansion. And obviously, it was a complete disaster. The new offices didn't generate enough business to cover costs, employees didn't know what they were doing, and in less than 6 months, they had to close 2 of the 3 offices, losing an absurd amount of money. But wait, because it gets worse. Tyler, desperate to impress some big potential clients, committed financial fraud. He basically falsified some numbers and performance reports to make the company look more successful than it really was. The clients eventually discovered the truth and not only canceled the contract, but threatened to sue the company for fraud. The company's reputation, which my father had built over decades, was destroyed. Clients who had worked with us for years started leaving, employees were quitting because they didn't want to be associated with the scandal, and Tyler was completely overwhelmed, with no idea how to fix the mess he had created. A few months after the fraud scandal, which by that point was public knowledge in the industry, my parents showed up at my house without warning. Sarah opened the door and told me they were there. I honestly didn't want to see them, but Sarah let them in because she's kinder than me. My father looked terrible. He had aged like 10 years, had dark circles under his eyes, looked tired and defeated. My mother was crying before they could even sit down. My father started with Daniel. "We need your help. The company is in serious trouble." And I said, "Oh, now you need me?" It was a long and painful conversation. Basically, they begged me to come back to the company, to take control, to save everything my father had built. My mother was saying things like, "Please, think about the family, think about your father's legacy." And I asked them, where was that concern for family when they passed me over? Where was that respect for my work when they chose Tyler? My father admitted he had made a mistake, that he should have chosen me, that Tyler wasn't ready. But honestly, it was too little, too late. I told them no, that I wasn't coming back, that they had made their bed and now they had to lie in it. My mother got angry, called me selfish, told me I was letting my pride destroy the family. And maybe she was right. Maybe it was pride, but it was also principles. I wasn't going to go crawling back to a company that had rejected me, especially not to clean up someone else's mess. I threw them out of my house, and that was the last time we had a face-to-face conversation for a long time. After that visit, something changed in me. I had been angry for so long, hurt, bitter, that honestly I was tired of feeling that way. Sarah suggested that maybe I should do something productive with all that knowledge I had, that instead of working for someone else, I could start my own business. At first I thought she was crazy. I mean, starting a real estate company from scratch requires capital, connections, time. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. I knew the industry. I had experience. I knew exactly what mistakes to avoid because I had seen Tyler make them all. So that's what I did. I took out all the savings I had, got a small loan, and started my own real estate company. The first few months were tough, honestly. I worked from home because I couldn't afford an office. It was basically just me doing everything. But I started contacting former clients of my father's company, not to steal them, but just to let them know I was available if they needed services. And you know what happened? Several of them, without me pressuring them, decided to work with me. They told me they had always trusted me when I worked at my father's company, and that they preferred to work with me directly than deal with the circus that company had become. Also, some employees who had been fired by Tyler or who had resigned contacted me asking if I needed help. Within 6 months, I hired 4 employees, all talented people I knew and respected from the business. My company started growing faster than I expected. It wasn't anything massive or anything, but it was stable, profitable, and honestly much more satisfying than working for my father had ever been. Every client I got, every deal I closed, was on my own merit, not because of my family name or favoritism. For the first time in years, I felt valued, respected, and in control of my own destiny. Obviously, this didn't sit well with my family. Jessica sent me a legal letter, literally, from a lawyer, accusing me of stealing clients and employees from the family business. She threatened to sue me for unfair competition or some legal nonsense like that. I forwarded the letter to my own lawyer, who basically told me she had no case, that clients were free to work with whomever they wanted, and that employees had the right to seek work wherever. I never responded directly to Jessica, just had my lawyer send her a letter saying any future communication should be through legal representation that basically closed that situation. About a year after starting my company, I was working late at my new small office, because by then I had been able to afford a modest but professional space, when suddenly my parents walked in. I don't know how they knew where my office was. They probably asked around or something. This time they came to confront me, not to beg me. My father was angry, accused me of having stolen his business, of having used everything he had taught me to compete against him. I said, "And what did you expect? That I'd stay unemployed forever? That I'd sacrifice my career to protect yours?" I reminded him that he was the one who passed me over, who chose Tyler over me, who basically told me I wasn't good enough. Everything that was happening was a consequence of his own decisions. My mother tried the emotional approach again, saying that family should be united, that I was destroying my father's legacy. And I finally exploded, told them I didn't care about their legacy, that they had destroyed any loyalty I had for them when they decided Jessica's son was worth more than me after 12 years of work. I told them to leave my office and not come back. My father looked at me with this expression of hatred and disappointment and told me I was a failure as a son. Those were his last words before leaving, and honestly, they hurt more than I expected, but I didn't change my mind. I had already made my decision. The next 2 years were interesting. My father's company kept declining. They lost more clients, more employees, had to sell the office building they had bought years ago to cover debts. Tyler eventually resigned as CEO, basically admitting he couldn't handle the situation, and my father had to go back to trying to run the company himself despite his age and deteriorating health. My company, on the other hand, kept growing steadily. We weren't the biggest company in the market, but we had a solid reputation, loyal clients, happy employees, and most importantly, I was happy. Sarah was proud of me, my employees respected me, my clients trusted me, and I had achieved it all on my own. About 6 months ago, my father sent me an email. I don't know why an email and not a call or a letter. Maybe because it was easier for him, I don't know. The email was long, basically an extensive apology where he admitted he had made the biggest mistake of his life by not choosing me as his successor. He said he had let Jessica manipulate him, that he had underestimated what Tyler needed to learn before being ready, that he had taken all my work and dedication for granted. He asked me to forgive him, to reconsider having a relationship with him before it was too late, that he didn't want to die with this distance between us. I read the email like 3 times, and honestly, I felt nothing. Not forgiveness, not anger, not sadness, just like emptiness. I never responded to that email. 2 weeks ago, I heard my father's company finally closed. It couldn't recover from all of Tyler's mistakes, from all the debts, from the ruined reputation. My father is now retired, living off his pension or whatever he had left after selling everything. Jessica is furious with me, blaming me for not having helped them, saying I could have saved them if I had wanted to. Tyler, from what I heard, is working in retail sales or something like that, completely out of the real estate industry. My mother still sends me text messages occasionally, trying to rebuild some kind of relationship, but I keep the responses short and superficial. My company now has 12 employees, a nice office in a good location, and we just had our most profitable year since we started. Sarah and I are thinking about having kids soon, starting our own family away from the drama of mine. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. If I should have helped my father when he asked me if my pride was more important than family. But then I remember that moment at the birthday party, the feeling of betrayal, the 12 years I invested only to be discarded, and I realize I don't owe anyone anything. I built something on my own, without help from my family, without my father's name, and honestly, that's worth more than anything I would have gotten by staying at that company. I don't know if I'll ever forgive my father. Maybe someday. But for now, I'm okay with the distance, with my independent life, with knowing that everything I have I earned on my own,